Good evening and welcome to this edition of In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. I'm Eric Marsh, Executive Director of WCTV. Glad you're able to join us as summer's over. We're back in the studio. We're not in Glenn Miller Park. We're not at McBride Stadium. We are back in the studio for the first of what is probably going to be 12 or 13 live programs in a row here on In Focus. So thanks for joining us. This one should be very, very interesting and hopefully a little entertaining. Let's start by first, I need to say thank you to a young man, Zach Watson, who was my camera person editor for most of the summer as we took In Focus out of the studio and on the road. Zach has been with us on and off for a number of years. He's a graduate student at Ball State studying film. He comes back and spends the summer with us, and he did a great job for us this summer, particularly the ones we did in the park and the fair show. He did some great work for us, so we appreciate him, and he is a Centerville High School graduate. So we're going to be throwing some love to some of the schools since we'll be talking to the school superintendents around. We do have a couple of Northeastern graduates actually on staff right now, one running camera, one talking in my ear sometimes. We've got a Richmond High School graduate who's going to be doing some directing for the Board of Zoning Appeals, which immediately follows this show. So we greatly appreciate the relationship. And we're going to talk about that later. Hopefully we can get some things worked out with some of your students in the future. But we appreciate the relationship that we have with the area school systems. This is leading into our In Focus candidate forums, which, as you may or may not know, is a series of conversations we have with contested race candidates. So we've got some of those lined up. Some of those candidates are going to be school board members, and that's why we have some of these folks here. They're going to be talking about what they're looking for in school board members, along with some other things. But want to remind you that in order to be part of the voting, you should get registered to vote. So voter registration ends October 9th. You can register Monday through Fridays, 8:30 to 4:30. The voter registration office in the Wayne County Courthouse. You can also go to indianavoters.com for more information on that. We'll also be putting up, and you'll be seeing here in the weeks to come, the list of the races that we will have and the dates that we'll have them, running through some of them. Hagerstown Town Council should come up. They've been invited on August 23rd. Fountain City Town Council on the 30th. We've reserved a few weeks for school board. Wayne Township Trustee on September 27th. United States Representative 6th Congressional District on October 4th. Indiana State Representative District 56 on October 11th. Wayne County Council District 6 on October 18th, and Indiana State Senate District 27 on October 5th and 25th, excuse me. And of course, we'll be live here November 6th, Election Day, beginning at 6 p.m., and we'll take you through all of the vote counts here. So be sure to join us each Thursday on In Focus. Let's get to this conversation because I think it might be a little fun. I'd like to welcome our guest, the Superintendent of Northeastern Wayne Schools, Laura Blessing. Thank you for being here.
Thank you for having us. We appreciate it.
Bill Doran is okay?
You bet.
Superintendent at Nettle Creek Schools.
You bet. Thank you.
Phil Stevenson, Superintendent at Centerville Abington Schools. And the gentleman who helped me put all of this together, Todd Terrell, who is the Superintendent of Richmond Community Schools. Thank you all very much for being here.
Thanks for having us.
Let's start there. Let's start with school board. Obviously, a lot of conversation about it this year. I think each of you have at least 2 positions that are up, district and some at-large seats. We'll start with you, Laura, and just ask, as you think about your school board and the makeup of it, what are some of the characteristics for you of what you think of as a potential good school board member?
Sure. I mean, obviously we want community members who care about our students and helping us assist in the policy and the decision making that goes on. I like a diverse group of board members, possibly, obviously a good mix of male and female board members. I think they bring different perspectives to the board if they're a mom versus a dad and different types of professions. I think that we've had I think right now almost every one of the board members has had a student in our district or recently graduated or has current students. And I think they have a real vested interest in helping make the decisions and supporting the school and the administration and the teachers. And that's what we want with our board members. They're there to help support us, help guide us, and just assist in the important decisions that have to be made in a school corporation.
Okay. Well, same question. When you think of a good board member, a potential board member, what do you think you're looking for in your area?
First thing certainly is child-centered. They can be new to the corporation, the community, or they can have been here for generations. They each bring a unique perspective. I think the idea of representing as diverse population as possible is important. We need certainly people who have a lot of time on their hands. It is very time-consuming to review materials, to prepare, to make the important decisions that they make.
Okay. Phil?
Yeah, I agree. I think board members need to be prepared to spend a lot of time. I think every school has their own board culture, and for us, we like to embed board members on a lot of our school improvement committees and with hiring of principals, assistant principals. So they do get involved in that way. And they also have to be very involved in the community and, of course, like they said, child-centered. So you do want to remember that for some of us, we have board meetings twice a month, but there's also so many other meetings that we have. And so they have to be able to be really committed to the position.
Okay. And Todd, what do you think?
Yeah, I think many of the things that have been mentioned already are very important. The diversity of a school board, looking at that, being student-centered is obviously a critical and crucial piece of that. I think one of the things that's really important is looking for those individuals who can be student-centered, have a particular interest in different aspects of our school corporation, but are still able to step back and see that larger picture and really be able to make decisions based on what's best for the majority of kids, as opposed to just certain individual groups that may be there. The other part of it is that willingness to take that next step and really get involved at the next level with politics, at our state level, at our national level. There are so many things that are going on right now, changes that are happening in our country, in our state, that they really have to keep up on that so that they can communicate, take that lead to really step out and hold our legislators accountable for the vote back home and the impacts that it has, whether that's testing, whether that's funding, whatever it may be, and how that impacts each of our individual communities.
It's one of the last times I'm actually going to kind of do that go around. So this is just going to be a conversation about a series of topics. As you look at how your board is made up right now, I know the Chamber of Commerce put out an opinion piece a couple of weeks ago in the Palladium item suggesting that as workforce development becomes more and more important, the school districts obviously want to be able to align their students as closely as they can with the opportunities for both higher education, but also workforce, whether that is a certificate or something there. How does your board makeup work right now as far as business leaders in your communities being part of your boards, and how important do you think it is that more of them maybe become involved and become board members?
I think, well, at Nettle Creek we have 3 that are business folks, and it's a nice, you always want that balance. That's just so important. Certainly the business community needs to be represented because that's where our kids are graduating into, and they need to be prepared for that. But we're really looking for that balance. But at Nettle Creek we have 3 business people.
We have 2 farmers, 1 engineer, a state policeman, 1 business person, and 1 person works at IU East in technology. So you do have a wide spread of individuals that are involved in the decision making. And Mr. Terrell mentioned about how important it is for them to make decisions that's based upon the entire community and with the entire school. And that's very important. It's a team. The school board is a team. They're making decisions for the entire community and the school and all the students. And where you get into some issues sometimes is when you get off that course. but it is a team, and it's very important for that school board to work that way. Sometimes they get in situations where, you know, they don't agree with each other, but I've always stressed that you can disagree, but you still have to support the majority, and that's tough to do sometimes.
And, you know, I think, again, going back to it, I think it's really about that balance. Is it important to have the business represented? Absolutely. But there's so much more to that. And so we have a real good mix right now. We have 3 individuals who have business. Either they're employed, they own a business themselves, they run a business, and that's really beneficial. But I think there always has to be that balance to come back to it. So to say that they should all be business people, I don't think would be correct.
Right.
I think it's really important to have those who are in the service industry to be represented. I think it's a value for all of us. I think we can speak to the fact of having former educators as board members is a plus. And again, it goes back to bringing that balance so they can talk about the things that they've experienced in the classroom as administrators, and then throw that off of what's the business side of it looking at, and what are the needs of the community, but then how do we get there and look at it. And so I think it's just crucial, again, that diversity is probably going to be the thing that you're going to hear throughout the night is really crucial for all of us as we look at filling those board positions that are coming open.
What's your makeup right now?
We have a farmer, and we have a local business owner in Fountain City. We have a technology related person from Belden, so that's good. And then also a pharmacist and a social worker. So I think diversity, they really do cover a lot of areas that or even education related. So we talked about involving them on committees and interviews. I mean, they bring a background where a lot of them have had experience in HR, had experience in technology or social work, but then also having that local input of the farmers, which make up a large tax base, you know, especially in Fountain City, and then even a small business owner right in Fountain City. They bring a lot of different perspectives, and we find where their strengths are, and they, again, assist just more than those board meetings and attend, you know, committees and work on different things within our school.
When you look at, and we've got 4 obviously different school corporations here, and you all, some people would think you all rarely talk, but I think you all meet on a fairly regular basis, as I understand it, don't you?
Correct.
We
yes.
do.
Too often?
Well,
The conversation after the meeting or before the meeting is usually better than the meeting conversation. But
How often do you all get together? How often do the superintendents
we get together about once a month during the school year.
Okay.
During the summer, we don't meet, obvious reasons. And then during the school year, if there are things that come up that interfere, we understand that. But we try to get together monthly, and that's just here locally. But then we're all part of regional groups as well and state level groups where we see each other. I would say we probably run into each other 2-3 times a month.
Yep.
and for
Some
some
of
of
those
us
meetings
even,
are trainings
Yeah.
that we go, because as education changes, so does our knowledge base. And so we see each other in trainings all the time.
Sure.
and plus we have different co-ops we belong to, and plus we're on the different boards, and so I see Mrs. Blessing quite a bit, and
Weekly, probably.
yeah, probably, you know, that's how that goes. So we
Do
do
all
work.
of your school boards carry the same role? Do all of your boards work with you in all of the same ways? Now, you have been in Richmond Community Schools before you went to Nuttall Creek. From one board to another, is their role with the school exactly the same as far as you all's conversations go?
Their charge is the same. Now, it's interpreted maybe differently in each of our communities, but they're
And that's the question. What's the
their
interpretation and
defined
what's
role
the differences?
is actually very similar.
Okay.
And as Todd mentioned, each of our boards have a kind of a flavor of their own, and that reflect our community. And so, you know, my board meetings look different than Mr. Stevenson's board meetings because of the people there. But their posted role is the same.
Now, we're going to invite your presidents or board vice presidents. Hopefully they got the letter. Hopefully they'll come in next week. So I'm a little curious as to what their take will
Yeah,
be.
really.
Because actually, and I'll say I was in a meeting with Todd and one of his board members who said, our interaction with Todd is different than the previous superintendent, is different than the superintendent before that. So does the makeup of your board, as it changes, change your dynamic with those individuals and how you interact with them?
Absolutely.
Yeah, I think it, and even with the last elections that we had a couple of years ago now, we had a couple of board member changes as well. And so even the board, not just the Richmond Community Schools Board, but even the board based off of who is a part of it changes and how they interact with each other. And the type of communication they want and desire has changed with social media being what it is now, with electronic capabilities, with cell phones being able to text and let them know anytime there's an issue that goes on. So I think really not only even just our individual boards, but as those candidates and as the members of the board change within the board, it really changes the dynamic and what they expect. And that's the challenge I think that all of us would tell you, is trying to figure out that sweet spot with communication, knowing what's enough and what's too much as far as each board member even, and what they want to know and what their expectations are.
As you all look at the schools and your school boards, one last question. You've all mentioned time commitments that they have. On average, what kind of time do you think board members need to be devoting on a monthly basis? And I know it may vary, summer may be a little less, some things may be a little more, but on average, what's the time commitment of someone? Because someone may be watching this going, well, I've been thinking about being a school board member. What are the requirements? What are the time commitments? They're trying to figure that out. So help them understand where that comes in. Most of you meet twice a month. I know you all have twice a month meetings.
We only have once a month.
Once a month?
Yeah.
Twice a month?
Twice.
Okay. So you've got 2 nights taken up there, committee meetings on top of that?
Yes.
Okay.
In professional development, they have to be involved in some kind of professional development. And so they attend meetings, fall conferences, whatever it may be. So board members need to be involved in the professional development so they're more aware of what we're going to bring to them. But I assume we all use board packets of some form to prepare the board when they make decisions and at meetings and so on. And that takes a lot of preparation, depending on what's going to be the topic. But when you're looking at budgets and that sort of thing, it takes a lot of involvement, because you want a board that's informed and making good informed decisions. So it's hard to nail down how many hours it's going to take, but it is something that they have to be flexible with. For instance, we just went through a building program. Now we're preparing for another one, and those the board members come in and sit in on those meetings, and a lot of them are during the day, and so some board members are able to do that and some aren't. But you can't have more than, for ours, like 2 present, but they're very involved in the decision-making process. So it is important that they're a well-informed board, and it does take more than just 1 or 2 board meetings a month.
And it's that preparation that they need to do that makes them really superlative board members. So when the conversation starts, they're right hit the ground running, so to speak.
Engaged, ready to go.
You betcha.
And it probably depends too on how long they've been a board member. So we have some board members who have been on for 10, 15, 20 years maybe. And so they're coming with a little bit different background than somebody who is just newly elected to the board and hasn't spent a lot of time. So understanding the finance piece of it, understanding the legal background of what's going on in school law now, state testing requirements, all of that really plays into it. So to give that number would really be hard, because it really is based on the individual's background, where they're coming from, and what the baseline knowledge is that they have.
It may be helpful to people who are considering to run to know that the School Board Association provides training for new school board members. I always think of myself as the teacher of the boards, and so it's my job to make sure that they have the information that they need and that they understand. But their state organization also provides information online and in workshops around the state.
And in addition to the board meetings and committee meetings, graduation. I mean, most board members we ask to attend graduation and assist with the diploma, passing out diplomas or helping confer the graduates. Interview processes, I mean, they can take 4 to 6 hours just in one sitting. And then typically there's executive sessions. We all hold those. So it's not just those 1 or 2 meetings a month and some committee work. We always encourage them to go to athletic events, performing arts events, and see what our students are doing. Ours are invited to the back to school breakfast, the end of the year retirement as well. So there's, to say 5 hours to 8 hours a month, it probably depends. But some months it could be well more than that, and then reading the board packets as they mentioned. So there's a lot.
But it's fun.
Yeah.
It's so much fun.
There's the sales page. Yeah, but it's all fun. It's okay.
All right, it's not all fun. There are some enjoyable times. Many
You're
enjoyable
watching In
times.
Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're sitting with 4 of the superintendents of Wayne County Schools. We appreciate you all being here. The school just started this week. Is it me, or does it just keep moving up and up and up and up? It just keeps getting earlier and earlier. Are we moving toward that year-round, where there'll be a 4 or 5 week break and then it's just a year-round type of thing?
No.
Does the calendar keep changing?
Correct.
I hope not.
No. How's the school year started for all of you all? Everything, buses run on time,
Yes.
everybody got where they were supposed
Very
to be,
smooth.
there's joy and happiness.
Everybody-
Everywhere is joy and happiness.
Yes.
We're off to a great school year, though, and we appreciate you asking. It's one of the things that we take very seriously here. And people may think, representing the 4 different districts, 5 here in our county, we all have the same goal, and that is really to educate our children and prepare them to be citizens of Wayne County and come back here and stay here and help this county prosper. And so we have kids that move in and out of each other's districts, and we really work together to make sure that happens. Are there times that it's don't go to Centerville, you need to come to Richmond? Well, of course. But at the same time, we all have that end goal in mind, and that is, that's why we went into the business that we're in, and that is because of what we want for our kids, and that's the best. And so I think we are all watching and paying attention to each other's districts and hoping for the best for everybody as they start, and it has been a good start to the school year.
And I think that's changed a little bit over the years, because we do see ourselves now as 5 school districts that work together, because we do represent Wayne County, and we're not individuals anymore, individual school districts, but we are all work. We're all related, not related necessarily, but we're all connected some way, because our people work in Richmond, and we're all in this together as far as Wayne County is concerned, and that wasn't always the case. But we do share a lot of kids. We have a lot of movement between Centerville and Richmond, especially, kids will move back and forth all year long. And so we do keep in touch with each other on what our kids are doing between the districts. It is very important. So it has changed over the years, and there's a lot more camaraderie between the 5 superintendents in Wayne County, especially the one sitting here. So it's a positive change, and when business leaders meet with us, they meet with the 5 of us, and they ask us questions, and we work together as a unit, and we're all trying to make Wayne County a better place, and that's important. So I was glad this is a positive turn in things.
Sure. And we share students. I mean, my students attend the Career Center, so we work closely with our calendars. And as Phil mentioned, we have cooperatives, so we may share insurance with some of the other school corporations to help save costs. We all belong to the same service center in Connersville that helps provide professional development and fuel co-ops and just different programming. And now with a lot of us partnered with Lilly, so we all received a grant as a whole. So there's just a lot more ways that even our state level is looking at how we can all be locally districts and work together. But we still retain our small identities for some of the smaller communities. So yeah.
But we do work together too. We're not separate units. So if we send something out to each other, emails or whatever, we're always asking each other, well, what do you do in this case, or how are you handling this? And it is a group effort. We all get along with each other. It may not appear to be that way, but we really do. But But we have fun with it too. I mean, that's what you have to have. And so we do, you know, the camaraderie is very important, and it's really gotten better too over the years.
I think the partnership that we have, I'm going to speak to that, especially representing a small school corporation. We don't have a lot of people at central office. You know, in my office, there's 3. And so if I need, you know, to bend somebody's ear or get some advice, you know, I call them. And it helps, you know, again, maintain our own separate identity, but yet there still is an economy of scale that makes a lot of sense.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're talking with 4 of the 5 superintendents of Wayne County Schools. We are taking your questions. You can send them on Facebook, or you can also give us a call, 973-8587. I haven't had to say that number for a while, so I have to look down and cheat. Or you can send a tweet to @WCTV Info. Since you all were at that point, I have to throw out this premise that is out there. You know what's coming because you've heard it. I can tell by the grimace. Look on your face. There has been a suggestion, and from where I grew up, I understand it because it was the way our school systems were. I did not grow up here. I grew up in suburban Chicago, where there was one school district that oversaw multiple schools, one central office. Each school had its own principal, its dean at that time. They called them that took care of discipline. But everything filtered up to one school system. There was one school board. It has been suggested that that could be a cost savings, a way of maybe taking some money off the top that could maybe filter its way back down. Now, obviously, you all wouldn't be happy with that because or 4 of you all, if one other person was in this, could be out of a job, at least as a superintendent. But what is your thought on when you think about funding, being able to, and the state has pushed slowly, quietly, maybe not so quietly in some ways, the idea of consolidation. That particular idea, it is not foreign. There's Indianapolis Public Schools, Chicago Public Schools, multiple schools, one district office. Why wouldn't that work here?
We've all said the exact same thing in the last 10 or 15 minutes, and that is that we're child-focused. And so I don't think anything's necessarily off the table. But we've also talked about our communities being very different. And I know, having lived in a couple of communities now, but particularly Nettle Creek, our families are very proud of what we've done. And we've got many generations of students that have been educated at Nettle Creek School Corporation. So I don't think anything's necessarily off the table because we're driven by the common goal for serving children. But I think that we would have to do a lot of work before we could be convinced that that was the way to go.
Okay. Even there was one school, but the schools remain the same, you don't combine the schools. Every school has its name. Northeastern doesn't change. Nettle Creek doesn't change. Centerville Abington remains. The only thing that changes is the top. There's one superintendent, one board for the entire area.
Well, we did a study several years ago, and this was when Dr. Borf was here, of looking at what the structure was at Centerville, and then we looked at what was the structure at the other 4 school districts. And what we found was that the 4 individual school districts operate bare bones, basically. And I'm not saying Richmond is not, but I'm just saying that when you look at our district, he has 3 people in his office. We don't have, necessarily curriculum directors and all that. I have 2.5 people in my office. You probably have 2.
Right.
And so it's not like we're running around with a lot of administrative overhead. That's not the case. Okay. But it's going to be a tough sell in Centerville to try to merge with other school districts. It's like it's local control. And it's not necessarily the fact that it's going to be more efficient. We're already running about as efficient as bare bones as you can. But I've been in Centerville long enough to know that that's one reason they're in Centerville is because it is Centerville.
And I think, I'm sorry, go ahead.
No, that's enough.
And you were, Eric, you were president of State of Schools address that we had a couple of weeks ago here in Richmond. And one of the things we talked about was the percent of dollars to the classroom and looking at administrative costs and trying to keep those as low as possible. And while we had the lowest costs in the county, as you look at the other school districts, we're all well below what the state expects or the target that they give you. So I would suggest to you that while just looking from the outside looking in, you'd be like, well, yeah, that's a natural. That just makes common sense. I think, as Laura mentioned, they're members of co-ops and what they look at for their insurance costs and even for purchasing fuel for buses. So there's so many of those things that are already going back and forth between all of our corporations, looking at our career center and how we educate students, talking through different options. I know I've talked with Bill and some opportunities there for advanced classes, and so we all try to work together with that as much as possible. I think that as you started to really look at it, the amount that would truly be saved, I think, would be rather minimal.
I even suggested to Senator Rotz a couple of weeks ago that I thought some of the larger school districts in the state that are inefficient, like Muncie or some of them, they're the ones that will be busted up. I think they would be more efficient and so on if they ran, smaller, more efficiently, and we're really there for the kids. And I'm not saying that all large school districts, but it looks like to me, instead of trying to keep the big ones that are inefficient, it seems like they're stressing break up, let's merge the little schools, but the big ones are the ones that are having the issues. You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. At the same time, they're out there pouring money into charter schools that are very small, and they're also putting money into private schools that are very small. So I don't know where this idea is that they're going to save money when they're already pumping money into schools that are smaller, much smaller than ours. But they're out there saying, well, all schools under 1,000 maybe should need to be merged. Next, there'll be 2,000. So there's other issues there besides cost. If they think that the small schools are doing such a good job, why are they funding them? The really small schools like charters and so on.
That's a good point.
Right.
You'd almost say they're talking out of both sides of their mouth.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I'm not saying that here.
I
think you just did.
You want to say that with the camera right?
I'm not saying that here.
Well, and the majority of schools in Indiana are rural. We're small.
Mm-hmm.
There are large metropolitan areas in Indiana, but not that many. So if people live in Indiana, they typically are in a smaller community. I think a lot of the educators prefer to work in a smaller community so they can really connect with their families and their students. And when you consolidate, that just thinks everything's going to be big, my voice won't be heard, and that's a concern, for their students, for the parents, for the educators. And then, our identities stay the same, but then that fear of, well, is our local control really going to be there? Mm-hmm. And I think
Wayne County is unique that they have 5 strong local communities. Mm-hmm. Richmond, Cambridge City, Hagerstown, Fountain City, Williamsburg, all those, Centerville, Abington.
Carlos.
Yeah, but I think it's very important that these towns and cities want to keep their identities, and I agree with her that they want a response. So if they have an issue, they know they can go to our school board and do that. But if you get the whole county together, the responsiveness is just going to be buried in layers of bureaucracy. It'd be doubling the size, really, of all of our schools.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. Thanks for tuning in this week as we talk to some of the superintendents from Wayne County Schools. School's just beginning. We've talked a little bit about how things have changed. When I came through school, we had a couple of resource officers in schools. That has been a standard for a while. But safety in schools is an issue that just continues to evolve. It's got to keep you up a little bit thinking about it. Hand wands, metal detectors, how far will our schools end up really needing to go? And how do you plan to think about funding some of those changes?
Sure. I think one of the biggest things is, and we're all involved in what's called the Indiana School Safety Specialist Program here, where we have people in our buildings in our districts who are trained yearly. They have to go for at least 2 days of training to make sure that we keep up on what are the latest trends coming with school safety. And I think the biggest concern is you study the different incidents that have gone on around our country, and they're awful. It's ridiculous to even think about the things that have happened. But typically there has been something that has tipped off that there was a problem there. And so it's really looking at how do we keep informed of the concerns that our people have, that our teachers may have, that our parents may have, our community members, our students may have, and then really taking that seriously and looking into those different concerns and making sure that we address them. The idea of wands, the idea of metal detectors, the concern that I would have with that is unless you're using them 24/7, all day long, every day, for every kid, how does that truly help? And for instance, when we have fire drills and students leave the building, are we going to wand all of them when they come back in the building? Our facilities, like many of the superintendents sitting around the table tonight, are used all the time. Tiernan Center, they may get 6 hours off in the evenings over the weekend, but it's a hopping place. And so are we, every person coming in that building then would have to go through something like that. And so I really think it comes down to, again, if you have a concern, make sure you say something about it. If you think, should I have said something about it? You should have. And just let us know. And I think we have to balance that with the world that we live in. One of the great things about living in the country that we live in is the freedom that we have and the ability to express ourselves and the diversity that we have, and not being afraid of diversity, but embracing that diversity. And so immediately when we start doing that and say, well, let's just do certain groups, and we'll just check groups of people as they come in, immediately I start to have some concerns as we look at that, thinking, well, why this group and not that group? Why this individual and not another individual? But I think cost is a serious factor as well. Research that we've done would tell you for every wand that you have, you need at least one armed officer standing there. Because if I wand Phil and he has a gun on him or a knife, well, what do I do now? Typically, if he's bringing that, it's probably not for a good reason. I think school safety is an important area that we all are concerned about. We all have had some sleepless hours because of it and concerns with it. And I think we just have to be practical. And again, if there are concerns, people need to let us know what those are.
I'd like to make the connection between the topic that we just discussed and the student safety. We were talking about the advantages of small community school corporations. All of my parents know all of my kids, and the kids know the parents, and it's everyone watching out for everyone. There is, they know each other. They're on the same sports teams. They're in the same marching lines. They're, in the same classrooms, the same PTO, and the community just knows each other so well. So if something is going to look awry or a little suspicious, it definitely needs to be reported. And I think our community, whether they're parents or community members, partner with the schools to keep our kids safe. But I think that's an advantage of a small school corporation because we all know each other and we know if something doesn't look right.
And I think each community's safety needs are different. I mean, we're currently, we have a task force with some concerned parents after the recent Indiana shootings back in the spring. And, they came to me and said, should we raise money? Because they understand that financially, you don't really budget for the kind of money that a large metal detector would cost, and then obviously the personnel to staff it. In addition to the school safety training that Todd mentioned, we also can receive grant money from the state. And a lot of that grant money can be used to fund school resource officers and also certain types of equipment. So we currently have one SRO that is funded through that grant, and we wrote an additional expenditure this year, so we will be hiring a second one. But we've also created a safety task force with some concerned parents. Sheriff Kappa and the Wayne County Sheriff's Department are our jurisdiction. Our schools aren't in Fountain City proper, so we're technically in Wayne County. So we work closely with Sheriff Kappa, and he voices the same concerns about metal detectors. If you're going to use them, it's wonderful. I think we're all appreciative that the governor stepped up and provided funding for some safety equipment. But again, trying to figure out the logistics and the safety that is involved in that. We are also looking into ALICE training. I don't know if any of the other schools have that, but it's a way that not only do we train our staff to react in case of any type of crisis, but even involve our students so that everyone is safe and everyone understands what to do. And from the research that we've seen, we definitely we're going to meet with our safety task force this week and talk about just kind of a wish list and what our community feels I mean, it's just being proactive. I mean, the only way we're going to absolutely prevent something is to constantly 24/7 search everyone, search facilities, and I mean, that's just not realistic. But I think the communities play a big role in that.
I think a lot of the issue is with the internal problems within the school, trying to intervene before it happens with the kids. And I think, I know Richmond's added more Centerstone. We've added more communities in schools. We've added more social workers, behavioral specialists, because that seems to be where the boiling point is. Something goes on at school, something's said on the internet, and then they come to school upset and angry. And so I think a lot of it's internal, where you have to respond to the issues with the difficulties that a kid may have or may be facing, whether it's bullying or whatever. And I think it's an internal thing with a lot of these kids, because you don't have too many people just wanting to go in and shoot up a school. A lot of these kids are bringing it in themselves.
And I think Phil mentioned a really important part of that, and that is the community partners that we have. Sheriff Kappa and the Wayne County Sheriff's Department have been wonderful. RPD has been great to work with. Looking at Centerstone, Communities in Schools, the Boys and Girls Club. I'm going to miss one now that I start listing them. But as we go through this, even the mayor stepping up and coming to meetings that we have to really talk through and look at the different security issues and concerns that we have has been a community effort. And again, you know, we're all so pleased with the way that our communities have responded to that and feel like that we are in a good place in Wayne County.
Really, a school board meeting, it doesn't go by that we don't discuss safety at some level. It may be a responsive conversation, but it's also proactive. And whether it's CIS or in our case we have DARE, we've maintained it as well. It's educating kids to respond and how to respond to a bully. You know, it could be at that level or, you know, other different levels.
And this is a very important topic for potential school board members. I mean, that will be something that they will spend a lot of time learning about, understanding, and helping us form policy and procedures because of all the recent changes.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We're speaking with superintendents from the Wayne County Schools. Your questions are being accepted, 973-8587. You can also send a question via Twitter at WCTV Info. We do have a question that has come in, so what is it? Oh, it's taking up the full screen. Is the free lunch program at some of Richmond community elementary schools based on the poverty level in our community, or is it based on other factors? Are there similar programs for the county schools?
Yeah, so I'll address that, and then you guys can jump in as you see appropriate. So it is based off of our economic level of our students.
Why don't you, for everyone who may not know, can you provide a little bit of background on what that is?
So what we look at is the free or reduced lunch rate of our students. So a lot of that is based off of income of our students and their families as they are experiencing different situations in their families. So as our at-risk population continues to rise here, not just in Richmond but in Wayne County and in many of the counties across our state, with that comes income levels that are at the point where it becomes trying for our parents to be able to provide the necessary meals for the students when they come to school. So what has happened with this process as you go through there, once you hit certain levels of the number of students who qualify for free or reduced lunch within your school district, within each building, you can apply for different programs, and one of those is where every student can qualify for free breakfast and lunch assistance. And so we tried this a couple of years ago in Richmond Community Schools, and we were just a little bit below that percent, and I don't have what that exact percent is, and I think it kind of fluctuates based on the circumstances and the population of each school district. And so that has really been a great thing for us. What we find is, for instance, all of our elementary schools for the last several years every student has qualified. Our intermediate building joined in as well. But at the high school level, many times they simply wouldn't fill out the paperwork. And so those students would really, while it was a challenge for them to be able to have the resources to get breakfast or lunch, they would just go without. And so this is really providing us a great opportunity to be able to provide for those students and really try to meet that need. You know, as our students come to school, we want them to be in the best situation possible to come in and learn, and this just takes one more of those distractions away so that they can focus on what they need to focus on.
Are there other programs?
Well, ours is just based on income. So we probably all don't meet the threshold for total. We have
don't.
several students that qualify for free and reduced lunch, but as the question said, is a whole school eligible? I'm sure you don't know the exact threshold. I mean, we're only in the 40s. I would assume it's probably going to be closer to 75%.
We are real close to 80% free reduced lunch right now. So
Yeah, we don't qualify for that, and we also don't qualify for summer. You have to hit a certain threshold, and I don't think any of us qualify for that.
Yeah.
And so that makes a difference.
CIS, and I don't know if Centerstone provides the Gleaners. We do
Yes.
have a community service programs called Gleaners, and students, they can take food home for like the weekend, evenings, even summertime, and there's places they can pick it up as well. So, I mean, if students need assistance, we do have that available, but like a school-wide effort, not yet, you know. For I think the counties.
To broaden that conversation a little tiny bit, when parents fill out that application, it affects more than just breakfast and lunch. It also affects our Title I, which is instructional support, and it also affects support for families for textbooks. And so it's broader than that, and we certainly encourage the families that need that help to sign up, and it's very confidential. All the kids are treated the same, so it's not, nobody is pointed out, but it really brings significant resource to all of our communities, actually.
You're watching In Focus on Whitewater Community Television's WGTV Channel 11. We've got about 12 minutes left, so we will still take your phone calls. You all started in the classroom as teachers, I assume. I understand that there is a teacher shortage that is going on in various, everybody's laughing. No, there's not one of those, is there? How do you have the conversation with the students that you come in contact with about the teaching profession and how it's changed, and how even maybe teachers are looked at or respected or not respected the way they used to be? And I'm sure that that's got to be some of what's going on with this, but how do we turn that around?
well, before Phil launches into this, this could be a whole nother hour-long program. But I'll turn it over to Phil. Be the elder statesman here.
Well, I think it has to come down a large degree with pay, and the state legislature has seen fit to really cut school funding to the point where, in many cases, most schools end up giving teachers only stipends, and that seems to be an issue. And then, of course, the testing that they have to take in order to get their license. Some of them are going to Ohio now and taking the test over there, and then they stay. And I think Channel 13 did an article on that several weeks ago. And it is amazing how many we're losing just because the cutoff points for these tests that they have to take and pass is so high. Mm-hmm. And so what we're doing is now some schools are taking teachers that haven't even had student teaching and placing them in the classroom, and they're counting that as student teaching. And but when I graduated and started teaching, 1972.
When?
There were a lot of teachers, and but it was you had salary schedules, and I have to admit, if you're not a highly performing teacher, maybe you shouldn't go up on that salary schedule. But the whole issue, I think, is with pay, and until they start paying them what they really should be deserving, you're not going to get people going in there that really want to be subjected to that pay scale. And teaching, you can't teach teachers necessarily to teach. I mean, you've got to like kids, and you've got to enjoy the subject matter that you have. And it's a lot to do with personality and how you relate to kids. And same thing all the way through when you become an administrator and you know, and that kind of thing. But I think it's very important that you keep a salary schedule of some kind. I'm old-fashioned enough. I think that's important so they can see their increments and if you can afford it. But the problem is that most schools in Indiana can't afford a salary schedule, and therefore teachers just get a $300 stipend or $400 stipend, and that's what they get for that year, but there's no base increase. And so they really don't see where it's going. Teaching's a whole different type of profession. It's not like a business, and they're trying to run it like a business, but kids are not widgets. And you know, they're all different, and they have to be treated that way. And teachers have a big demand on them right now. It's tough being in that classroom and still be able to enjoy teaching.
And I think the students see that. They see their teachers struggle, and they don't see the support legislatively and even federally. I mean, with ESSA and all of the requirements at the federal level, the additional testing, they've taken a lot of fun out of teaching. And I think our students see that. I mean, we're all seeing, you know, our graduates go into education, and we know we've seen our former students come back and be teachers, and that excites us. But I think that as educators ourselves, we need to do a better job promoting it and just emphasizing the positives, even when it is tough. But I also think we need to, and again, as school board members, they need to help us advocate to our state legislature about some of the changes that were made, around 2011 and 12, that really diminished that enthusiasm that a lot of our educators had.
A lot of that started back with the Nation at Risk in the 1980s, early 1980s, where all of a sudden we needed to have lots of testing. It wasn't so much that we teach kids to be problem solvers. We just want them to memorize things and pass tests. And we've gone really overboard on the testing thing.
I participated in a National Honor Society meeting last year in my school corporation, and I kind of wanted to see, you know, because they're the kids that are going on to college, and I asked the group if their goal was to be a teacher. I asked them to raise their hand. We had probably 50 in the group. Two. You know, you can talk a lot about the nobility of being a teacher, and I believe that to my core, but we have to also put the financial resources so that it is a more attractive, so that people can raise a family and provide for them.
Well, and I think we can see that a lot of times education has been a family business. Teachers throughout history have had family members, sons, daughters who have gone into education. My dad was a teacher. My mom had her own preschool. My wife's mom worked in a library at a school and retired from that. Her dad was a teacher. And it runs through our family. And so, but what we're seeing now is because of all the stress and things that have been mentioned around the table tonight, kids see that. And it doesn't even take parents saying, man, don't go into education. It's crazy right now with the way that the testing and trying to prove that your kids are learning through just a single test in a year. And so they read that and they see that and they react to that. And I think, as Bill mentioned, truly, until we get back to what education needs to be in our country and not looking at just test scores and comparing them to countries where they don't test everybody. You know, and that's the great thing that all of us feel about public education is we educate them all, and we're proud of that. We don't try to siphon off the top and just take the best ones to test. We're more than willing to step up into the challenge of our kids performing against other kids. But at the same time, we want you to do that in an effective manner. None of us want somebody to come in and take one snapshot one day and follow us around and evaluate us on how we did our job for the year based off that day. It could be a really bad day. But at many times we're asking kids to do that, and then we're judging our teachers based on that. So I think we have to get back to really looking at what is it that our country wants from our education systems, what is it that they need, and I think the rest will take care of itself.
We are down to 5 minutes. You all were going, are we going to make it? Yeah, we've made it. One more question I wanted to throw on the table, and I left it so that there wouldn't be a long political discussion, but we talked a little bit about school safety. There's an idea kicked out that teachers should be able to carry guns in schools. Just real quickly, your thoughts on it, and we can go around. We started here at the beginning. We'll start here at the end.
I'll start. I think it's a bad idea, and I think it's a bad idea for a couple of reasons. One, A lot of times it's, well, we'll keep them in a biometric safe somewhere. Well, so now I've got to leave my classroom and go to the biometric safe to get the weapon. The other thing I would tell you is that people who go into education, they love people. And in speaking with one of our resource officers and the amount of training that he went through in the military before he went into the police force, they're trained that when they pull their gun, they're ready to kill. And that may sound harsh, that may sound brutal, but that's what they have to be ready to do. And if you have that moment of hesitation, you're just the next victim. And so I think that it's a bad idea. Do I think that there are some places and circumstances that may warrant that? I think with certain military backgrounds, in certain rural school districts where there's not the response time that needs to be there, I still am not real comfortable with that. So my opinion, just short with the 5 minutes remaining, is I don't think it's a good idea.
3 minutes remaining.
I agree with Mr. Terrell.
I agree. No. Like anything else, you bring something new in without giving it full consideration, the proper training. It's more than just arming teachers. There's a lot more that would need to be done. I'm opposed.
I mean, we need quality educators, and educators are not, you know, police officers or safety officers. They're educators, and we want them to be confident and, you know, secure in their job and not put some kind of pressure on them that would just not be realistic. So, no.
Thank you. Thank you all very much for your time. Laura Blessing, Northeastern Wayne Schools, Bill Doring, Nettle Creek School Corporation, Phil Stevenson, Centerville Abington Schools, Todd Terrell, Richmond Community Schools. Thank you all very much for what you do for the community. Thank you all for your time here. Hopefully we can get you all back again, maybe near the end of the school year, and talk about how that went.
Sounds great.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us.
I want to remind you that voter registration is still going on for the 2018 general election. Registration ends on October 9th. You can register in the office at 301 East Main Street, so definitely go and get registered. You can also find out whether you are registered by visiting Wayne County IndianaVote.com. If your school has an announcement that you would like to put on our education channel, I want to remind you that we do on our education channel have a bulletin board that runs when we're not running video programming. So if your school has an event that you want to share with the community, contact WCTV at 973-8488. You can also send us an email. Just send us a poster to wctv@iue.edu, and we'll be sure to get that on the bulletin board. Some of the things taking place this weekend real quickly: Experience Wayne County, Wine, Art, and Antiques, Saturday, August 11th, part of the Wayne County Weekends. Go out and check that out. That's happening in Cambridge City this weekend. Also, the Heartbreak Hill 5K is taking place at Hagerstown High School. I hear that is at Hagerstown High School, where they have a serious run going on. That's part of the Wayne County Challenge. The information is there on the screen. Also taking place, the Adventure Hike at Cope Center. There is a lot going on this weekend. That's from 10 to 11:30. Hayes Arboretum is also having a Discovery Trail Hiking Club at 9 o'clock. And Movies at the Glen Coco, taking place 11 p.m. at dusk in Glen Miller Park. Next week, we'll be back with another In Focus beginning at 6 p.m. Also, don't forget, this program can be seen tonight beginning at 10:30. Also, tomorrow night, we'll have it for you at 8 p.m. Saturday, 8 a.m. and 9 p.m. Sunday, 8 a.m. and 1 p.m. And you can also find it on WGTV Online, our video on demand site. Audio of this program can also be heard Sunday morning at 6 a.m. on G1013 and 100.9 ESPN. My thanks to Caitlin and Steve for manning cameras tonight, Ryan for talking in my ear. Thank you very much for watching. Have a good weekend.